when you look at a deal, what are you looking for specifically? How are you managing your risk, securing yourself, et cetera, et
The
cetera?
biggest thing is just taking a look at the borrower's package. So what kind of work is being done, right? If it's a full gut rehab and they've only done cosmetic flips, then it doesn't really meet their experience level. So then I got to look at the deal itself. How do the numbers work out? How much room is there for a mistake? And if the individual is not able to finish the job, well, what kind of collateral is there? How much is it worth now? And what is it going to be worth when it's done? I need to make sure that there's enough equity where if for whatever reason the borrower falls through, I have to take over the property. Can I go out and complete the project myself and still get the money back? Or can I just sell it as is and get the money back? So major things are experience, track record, equity in the deal, and if I'm okay buying it for that price.
Can you tell us like real numbers from a recent deal or maybe a past deal that you did for Section 8? Like what was the purchase price, rehab, rent, et cetera, et cetera?
So the one that I like the most is the first one that I got into. And this was in Akron, Ohio. It was listed for I think 68,000. We ended up getting it for 62,500. It was a 2-1. Didn't need any work really, but it was a 2-1. And in Akron, there's a higher demand for 3-bedroom properties. So we converted one of the rooms into a bedroom and cost us maybe $4,000 plus to fix everything up. And it rents for $12.97 a month.
Welcome to another episode of Affordable Housing and Real Estate Investing. Guys, today I'm super, super excited for this conversation because I got my friend Jon and my future partner Jon. He is so meticulous with how he looks at deals, but also just how strategic he is because he looks at every single thing from multiple different angles, including how to evaluate partners, but also how to evaluate deals. Now, today for the community today, I really want you all to walk away with, man, if your problem is today that, hey, I don't have enough money and I don't know what to do or I don't know where to get money from, where better to look than someone with money that has invested both actively and passively in real estate like Jon. So I'm so excited for this conversation today. Jon, welcome to the show. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you for having me.
Man, I'm excited to have you, dude. I just know you just launched your podcast and I see all the great momentum you're having in life. You just quit your job, so congratulations on that first and foremost. But man, dude, I'm pumped for this conversation. I'm pumped to hear about your journey, but I know you really well because I spent some time with you. But for the audience that doesn't know you, tell us a little about you and how did you even get into affordable housing in the first place?
Sure. So I started off my career in the accounting field. Didn't really enjoy it a ton. Started off with billing and then moved my way into internal accounting, really just making sure that the books were good. We're tracking the money properly for a government contractor. Then kind of moved in towards doing business intelligence work, accounting automation. And then COVID hits while I'm in the middle of consulting. I was working for a small company. Remember sitting across from my wife who was pregnant with our second child at the time, just having a ton of anxiety about what's going to happen in the future. Is my company going to make it? Are we going to make it? So I looked for another way and just basically YouTubed how to get rich in real estate and just went from there.
Wow. So one little search let you down on this journey. And I mean, I know you because I first heard about you from another guest on our podcast and how you were a passive partner. But I understand that you have been a lender and an investor in many, many deals. So maybe just set the stage for us. What does your portfolio even look like today, man?
So right now I'm on title for 24 properties and I have control over 6. Most of them, so 28 of them are long-term rentals. 10 of those 28 are Section 8, and the other 2 are short-term rentals. And it's spread
So
across Huntsville, Chattanooga, Baltimore, and
that's
Akron,
interesting.
Ohio. Yeah.
That's interesting, man. So I love how you kind of explain all of that stuff because sometimes people say, like, oh, I got 28 doors, I got 24 doors. But you just talked about how you're part of that many deals, but there's certain ones that you actually have control.
Mhm.
So for the ones that you don't have control, like
Mhm.
what does that mean? Like, what's your role on those deals?
So for the 10 that I have in Akron, I'm basically just a private money partner, meaning I'm the capital partner. I just bring the money, whether that's my own money or I raise the money. And the reason why I got into that is because I wanted to learn about Section 8. My partner knew about it. So that's how I got into the affordable housing space.
Interesting. So a private money partner, just for the people that don't understand the terms, right? We've heard of private money lenders, we've heard of private money partners. Can you explain the difference between a private money lender versus a private money partner?
Yeah, absolutely. So private money lender carries less risk because we're coming in and we're getting a fixed rate of return. Whether the property makes money or loses money does not matter. I still get my return. As a partner, I get all the ups and downs of ownership, but I also get the upside of owning property as well.
Interesting. Okay. Now, for someone that's new in this space, how might they decide whether or not they want to be a private money lender or a private money partner?
That is a good question. One of the biggest misconceptions about real estate and owning rental property is that you live off the cash flow. Unfortunately, that's not how it works because I've had two properties where an entire year's worth of cash flow has just been wiped out from one repair. The real power of real estate is owning it, getting the principal pay down, the tax benefits, depreciation, and appreciation, right? So then after a 5 year period, when you have a large enough spread, you get a chunk of money. But again, you can have times when tenants don't pay. You're having to come out of pocket to pay for repairs and maintenance. But as a lender, you come in and you're guaranteed cash flow. You're not going to get all the tax benefits. You're going to get taxed on that money, but it is stable. It is lower risk. So it really depends on what your goal is. If your goal is cash flow, then lending is probably more down your lane. But if your goal is to build generational wealth, then ownership is definitely the way to go.
But man, dude, I just listened to you right now and you kind of just opened a box up for a big, big discussion. And
Mhm.
that's, you just kind of talked about it, right? Everybody thinks like, oh, you get into real estate and you buy all these properties and all this money just kind of comes into the mailbox and that's it. You're set for life.
Yeah.
But you just gave such a good example, man. For two of your properties, you had a big expense and that wiped
Yeah.
out your entire years of cash flow.
Mhm.
So I really love how you have formulated your portfolio because you have some that where you're a private money lender, there is a fixed rate of return, like you said, with slightly less risk because even if there is a big expense, such as a big repair, that might wipe out the cash flow for the partner who owns a property, you're still guaranteed that return because you are a lender, right? That's so important for people to understand because people might think, oh, how on earth would someone want to just lend on a deal but not own the property? People ask that question all the time. And
Right.
I'm trying to tell them, stop pretending you're everybody else. Everybody has different risk tolerances. Everybody has different goals in life. Some
Mhm.
people like a mix of their portfolio. Is
Yeah.
that how you thought about your portfolio, where you want to have someone as a lender, you want to have someone's equity ownership? How did you even approach that composition in your portfolio?
Great question. Everything that I have done in the investing space has been for the long term. And just understanding that when you buy a property, it's not today money, it's tomorrow money. That's really what my goal was. The lending piece, I really didn't even want to get into. It's just that about a year ago, actually a little over a year ago, my mom expressed some desire to retire. So I took a listing of all her assets, calculated, okay, well, if you spend this much money for X number of years, this is how long it's going to last until you run out of money. So I really got into lending out of necessity of making sure that my mom's principal never went down. She was able to live off the cash flow.
That is such a great point. And then that's what I'm hoping the audience takes away from this conversation today is that everybody has different types of goals. When you're a little older and maybe you're trying to retire, you might just want a consistent cash flow that's more predictable because your risk
Mhm.
tolerance might be a little bit lower,
Yeah.
right? That's super, super important. And that's why whenever someone asks me, like, how do you structure your deal with your lenders? How about you stop and you actually ask your partners what they want in life? Just ask them what's important to them. And then they will probably tell you something that might be completely opposite from how you look at your life, but that's their life and their risk tolerance and their hard earned money because you are not entitled to anybody's capital. So you got to figure out what works for them. And it's on you as an investor to figure out what scenario works best for your partner's situations. So I love that you kind of share that story about your mom and your family and your position because there's so many different ways to go and approach this conversation. And I think you have shared a breadth of perspectives there, man.
Appreciate it. And thank you for saying that because not a lot of people understand when you're listed as a private money lender somewhere and they just come to you and say, I got a deal. Well, that's great, but Yeah, and these are the terms. That's awesome. I'm happy for you. But how do you know this matches what I'm looking for? You know?
Ooh, so this leads to the next good question for you, man, because
Yeah.
you and I have seen so many people post on Facebook or just emails, hey, I got a deal, I need money. But that's obviously not how you try to raise money, to be honest with you. It seems like it's so desensitized or
Mhm.
detached from building the relationship. Like, why on earth should someone trust you, right? So, when you're a lender, how did you decide to invest in these deals? How did you look at them? Give some guidance to the audience for what they should be bringing into a conversation with someone that has access to capital like yourself.
Well, the biggest thing is just building that relationship before you need money. One of my borrowers who I had on my podcast, and you met him at Squad Up, we had a conversation about anything and everything outside of real estate. Nothing was business related. We just happened to build a friendship. And then 6 months after we built that friendship, he comes and says, oh, I got a deal. You interested? He tells me the numbers. And at that point, I just have to look at a few things. I know who he is. I understand who he is as a person. And it just makes it so much easier to fund that deal. So building that relationship way ahead of time and not even looking to build a relationship for the purpose of borrowing money in the future, just build a relationship, make friends.
That's what I tell people all the time. I was like, can you just be friends first? Because the people just
Yeah,
forget. I mean, if you just want just money, I mean, that's why you go to a bank, right? You don't have a great relationship with somebody, but you know that the
right,
deal might stand itself, and that's it. But on a private side, you got to have a friendship with people where people know, like, and trust you, and they understand how you look at deals. So
right.
you talked about relationship as one of the first items. When you look at a deal, what are you looking for specifically? How are you checking people's assumptions? How are you managing your risk, securing yourself, et cetera, et cetera?
The biggest thing is just taking a look at the borrower's package. So what kind of work is being done, right? If it's a cosmetic flip, well, I mean, if it's a full gut rehab and they've only done cosmetic flips, then it doesn't really meet their experience level. So then I got to look at the deal itself. How do the numbers work out? How much room is there for a mistake? And if the individual is not able to finish the job, well, what kind of collateral is there? How much is it worth now? And what is it going to be worth when it's done? I need to make sure that there's enough equity where if for whatever reason the borrower falls through, I have to take over the property. Can I go out and complete the project myself and still get the money back? Or can I just sell it as is and get the money back? So major things are experience, track record, equity in the deal, and if I'm okay buying it for that price.
That is such a great point, man. And I really want people to listen to this, right? Because John has looked at a deal. One, he has a relationship with somebody, but he also checked out the numbers to make sure that there is multiple exit strategies here. But also, what about if there's an oops in the deal, right? I probably only heard this once where someone says, hey, I finished the project under budget, on time. And when I see people presenting deals, it seems as if they are only presenting the best case scenario instead of
Mhm.
thinking out loud of, okay, what if X happens? How might I react to that? And John just gave a perfect example of how you should be prepared in that conversation with a private partner, whether that's a lender or a private money partner. He just talked about, hey, what are the multiple exit strategies, right? If something bad happens, what are they? What are we going to do? Or if I'm a lender, how am I going to recoup my principal if things go sideways? How am I going to be able to sell for more profit or to recoup the capital or to recoup just the at-risk capital? All this stuff really matters. And to go a little bit deeper into protecting yourself, because I really want people to understand. Again, this is not investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments on this call. Just make sure you talk to your own financial professionals. John, how else do you protect yourself? Do you put yourself on title, on a lien? Like, what does that look like for you as a private money lender?
Yeah, so many things that we need to do are we need a title policy, title search, right? We want to make sure that if we're coming in first or second position, we're actually truly coming in first or second position. Building contingencies into your agreement, saying that before anybody can come in after you, like if you're coming in a second position, you need to make sure that they cannot bring in a third position lender without your knowledge. Just communication requirements, right? If I text you and you don't get back to me within a week, then we have a problem. And then adding assignment of rents is something that I've seen. I haven't seen it used widely, but I do give it to my lenders. And yeah, being on title, making sure that they cannot sell that property without paying you off first.
That's a great one. You just talked about assignment of rents. We don't hear about that often. What does assignment of rents mean?
Basically, it just means that if for whatever reason something happens, then 100% of the rents will go to you until your investment plus return is paid back.
Nice. See, this is why you guys got to listen to John and his podcast because he just provides little gems like this that sometimes you might not hear about as often. But it's great when you're having a conversation with a lender, you can bring up these wings, right? Because now you are, in fact, protecting the interests of your lender or your private money partners. So be wise, be thoughtful in how you approach these conversations because that's going to determine what's a good partner versus a bad partner, right? Now, John, you've been part of a lot of transactions. How do you differentiate who has been a good partner versus, I don't know if the right word is bad partner, but maybe subpar partner? Can you give some examples of behaviors or characteristics of a good partner that you have observed?
Yeah, so a good partner would be someone who communicates regularly, whether the situation is good or bad, if the project's going well or not going the way that we think it's supposed to go, then just having good communication, I think, is key. And then the biggest thing is when I had a project, right, and I had a hard money lender that gave me a 9 month loan, and the project took me a year, right? Anytime after the maturity date, I was giving them updates every 2 to 3 days because I wanted them to feel like they owed me money. I wanted to make sure that there was over communication, right? Because it's their money at risk. And being a good partner just means that, first of all, you're transparent up front. It's not always going to go the way that we think it's going to go. And we need to know what could happen and what the backup plans are. And yeah, really the biggest thing is just good communication.
Wow. It sounds so basic, right, John?
Yeah.
It sounds so basic, but so many people mess up on it. I don't know whether or not it's because they're super busy, but if you are able to communicate regularly, regardless of good or bad updates, I think that is so key because it makes people understand that you truly care about being a steward of their capital, right? There's a tremendous amount of responsibility, and I think if people don't take that seriously, it's a big red flag, to be quite honest with you. Now,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, whether you're a lender or a borrower, it's a service-based business and you want to provide your customer with good service. Just do that.
I know. Well, for people that wants to vet whether or not someone's a good operator, right? What sort of questions might you suggest that they ask the borrower? Like, what are good questions? Because if there were like top two or three questions that you would ask every single deal, what do you think they might be?
That's a really good question. I would say it's not so much about the one or two questions. It is really about getting to know the person, the individual, through good situations and bad situations. Again, like anybody can be good and friendly and nice when things are going well, but how do they behave? How do they act when things are going poorly? And you want to see evidence of it too. HUDs, like if you're working with a fix and flipper, you want to see HUDs. You want to see good HUDs, and you kind of want to see bad HUDs too, because you want to see, okay, well, not everyone's going to be perfect. Then who was working with you on there, and then talking to those individuals, say, how was this person behaving when this project wasn't going the way that we all hoped it would. So just really understanding who it is that you're working with, what their values are, and just being a person.
That was that was such a good answer because I think
Thank you.
people just really, really forget about being a good human, but also understanding that people act very differently in bad situations. Are they the type to stick their head in the sand and hide from the problems, or do they face head on? Because, man, I've had family members who have been losing a lot of money in restaurants and they could have just closed up shop and ran away. But there's people that will fight. There's people that will continue pushing through and solving the problems, even when things get hard. So are you partnering with someone like that? And if not, ask yourself, hey, when bad things happen, what's going to be my role in the whole thing, right? Am I going to be expected to step in? And am
Mhm.
I going to be able to step in? If especially you have kids or family members that you're taking care of, right? Do you have the time and energy to even save the deal? We see bad deals happen every single day in our communities. So
Yeah.
be mindful, be thoughtful, because it's going to affect not just your life and your capital, but also everybody else that's depending on you for your support and your energy So I think that's just super important, man. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. So what about you? What are some questions that you would ask?
I always ask, great question. I always ask about, well, you have this one scenario that you presented, but what if X happens, right? What if a contractor runs off with your money? What if the rehab takes longer? Who's going to provide additional capital, right?
Mhm.
Because if I'm lending money on a deal, I would want to see, well, if the contractor runs out with the money, who's going to front the extra capital, right? The person that's vetting the contractor, right? Especially let's just take like a big rehab, right? I would want to know, how did you vet the contractor, especially if it's your first time doing a job with them, right? Show me that you've gotten referrals from other people, right? If it's a great contractor, you should have done a good job for other people. There should be other people that want to see him or her win. And in my opinion, if someone doesn't have any referrals, that to me is a little bit of a red flag, right? Because I
Yeah.
believe in relationships just like you, John. And usually, when someone has done a good job for somebody, you want to reciprocate, you want to thank them. And most importantly, in this world of business and the service based business, real estate, you want to thank them by bringing them additional business. And that usually comes in the form of referrals. And that's why I really like the fact that if you can vet the contractors, but also vet your operator very well in terms of understanding what your backup plans are, I think those are really, really good aspects you just kind of cover because it shows how much thought someone has
Mhm.
put into the deal. And the more thought you put into a deal, the more risk you mitigate, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
Look
One
at
thing I
you, such
wanted
a
to
good
add,
podcast host, asking such great questions.
I learned from you, man. One of the things I wanted to add to that was how transparent are they willing to be? When you ask them for HUDs, I say, yeah, I'll show you whatever you want. That's the kind of person you want to work with, not someone that, "Oh, I mean, I'll show you like three, or I don't have to show you anything." That's a big red flag.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because I think what I'm trying to tease out there is self-awareness. Because if someone's aware of about what their weaknesses are, right, then at
Mhm.
least I know they know where the blind spots are and they can at least look for some other areas to cover themselves, right? So I
That's
tell
so
people all the
true.
time, in the world of development, I'm on a team, we're building 785 units, and I'm simply the underwriter for the team and business development. I don't ever get involved in understanding, hey, how deep the foundation needs to go. And I never pretend I know that
Yeah.
because I understand that I would be inauthentic and I'd be lying, frankly.
Mhm.
But if you are able to understand your blind spots, well, how have you covered for that? So we talked about a contractor example, right? If you've
Yeah.
never done a fix and flip yourself, or you've never even put in a light bulb in your own house, man, you better have some good referrals, some testimonies about, hey, this person, yeah, the rehab was great. He was on time, he was on budget, and he always finished under the estimated time range. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And now, if you get it from one, and they might be lying to you, but if you get it from three or four or five people, now all of a sudden you have a little bit more confidence. Now all of a sudden you can go to someone like John and say, "Hey, this is why, look, I've never used this contractor before, but here's the three people I talked to. Here are their names. Here are their projects, and they all said they've been on time." Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, would that give you more comfort, John? Like, what, someone brought that to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's something that you rarely see in the borrower's package. You always see information about the deal and the individual themselves. But if they come in and they say, these are all the references for this contractor that never worked with, I mean, it's huge.
I completely agree with you, John. And I love that you brought up the borrower's package and how people just put in assumptions. And whenever I see people tell me the cash flow is the rent minus the PITI, the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, I
Yeah.
always just think, wow, either this person doesn't know how to underwrite at all, or they think that nothing is ever going to go wrong with the house. Like there's no landscaping even to be done on the property. So how you present your numbers is so important and it reflects truly how
Mhm.
much you thought about the process and where you thought about potential pitfalls in the deal. So don't be that person. Make sure you're able to properly back up and substantiate the assumptions in your spreadsheet because we can always put whatever we want in the spreadsheet, but it's the reason why those numbers are in the spreadsheet that matters more than the actual numbers themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
Man, John, hey, dude, where do people even get money to invest in the first place? Because do they just have to get lucky and I don't know, walk into you in a conference room and all of a sudden they're like, oh, this guy has a lot of money, right? Or access to a lot of money. John, where can people get capital to invest in affordable housing in the first place?
So there are a few different areas. The easiest, in my opinion, are friends and family. If you are treating your friends and family well, even before you're an investor, that's a good spot because I mean, they already know who you are, they trust you, right? And if you're doing well in whatever ventures it is that you are in, then that's a pretty easy way to get money. Another one that I think is very underutilized are self-directed retirement accounts. It used to be we spend 30, 40 years in one job and never change, but now it's not like that. You're constantly switching jobs and all of them have retirement accounts that come with it. And just having it sit there do stale is not a good use of the money.
Whoa. Pause. So you're telling me that there is a whole another way to get capital for investing in real estate. You talked about self-directed IRA really quick.
Mhm.
What
Yeah.
what's self-directed IRA? Like for people that have never heard of it, right? You and I have because we're in
Mhm.
this world, but for the
Yeah.
people that are in a W-2 job or they might be about to leave the current position to go to another company, etc. What is a self-directed IRA?
Self-directed IRA is just another retirement account. You have a solo 401k or self-directed IRA, very similar, but they are exactly what they sound like they are. The difference is that you get to decide where this money goes. With an employer provided plan, you are only allowed to purchase certain securities that vendor offers. But moving that money into self-directed just means that you can invest in real estate, you can invest it in crypto, in oil and gas, precious metals, anything that is deemed an investment, you can get involved in.
Yeah, I like how you set that baseline, right? Let's say you have, I don't know, I used to have Fidelity, right? So you
Mhm.
have a B2 employer, they typically set aside a certain fixed amount from your paycheck every single month that goes into an account. And from that account, you have choices of mutual funds or a
Mhm.
certain even stocks, depending on the flexibility of your plan, to invest into a mutual fund or index fund. Now, what John is saying is, boom, once you are transitioning to another job, there's typically what's called, I think it's a rollover option, right? If I remember correctly. Sometimes you can take your existing money from this employee that you're leaving and move it to the new company. But if you do that, now you're under the, I wouldn't say maybe restriction is the right word, but now you're under the new vendor with that company, and now you're only allowed to invest in those funds and not the same amount of flexibility that you might have with investing in real estate and to truly diversify your risk a little bit, right?
Mhm.
So, John, for people that wants to go about this, like what does that process even look like to get into a self-directed IRA account?
So the biggest thing is picking a vendor that you like. And the vendor does matter because the ease of moving that money depends on that company. So I've used two different companies. The company that I used for my mom has been okay, but the company that I used for myself has made the process so much easier just because they come in, they find out all the different accounts that you have available, and then they will get on the phone and help you get the transfer started. It's really white glove service, which I really, really enjoyed.
Interesting. So they can just kind of for an account and then they'll figure out like, okay, where's all your retirement accounts? And they just kind of do all the administrative work. So it's painless for you to bring
Mhm.
it into an account. And then you can use that money to just invest in real estate, like as a lender. Is that what you typically do with your South IRA account?
Yeah, so the biggest power, the most powerful use of your self-directed account is to learn. And the best way to learn, in my opinion, is to get into a deal. I want to learn about mobile home parks. I want to learn how a short-term rental operates. I want to learn how this individual who's a high-level investor operates. So I took the money from my self-directed account and I moved it into these three different investments so that I can be involved. I can see this is what they do, this is how they operate. These are how they handle good situations, bad situations, right? That is the most powerful use. And you're earning too. You're earning money. That's the most powerful use of your self-directed funds, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love that you talked about how this is how you learn. Because I think so many times people think about, I have to get a 20% down payment or 25% down payment and go get a
Mhm.
loan and buy this investment property for $100 of cash flow. When in reality, you could just be a lender. You can kind of have box in your risk, right? Meaning, hey, this
Mhm.
is my maximum loss, but this is kind of my fixed return. And this is what I can expect to earn over a point in time. Because when you're part of that deal, right, not only do you get to see the team that's being used by the operator, like John himself, right? Because people are
Mhm.
invested with him as a private money partner. You get to see the team. You get to see the realtor that they use. You get to see the contractor that they use, right? All these scary stories of contractors running off with your money,
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
happens. So if you want to see whether the contractor has run off with John's money before you hired a contractor for yourself, Well, how do you protect yourself? How do you lower that risk? How do you minimize the execution risk? Well,
Right.
you can lend money to John and say, okay, well, this contractor that gave him this budget, they gave him this quote. Was he on time? Was he on budget? Okay, he was a little late, but he still finished on time on budget. Or maybe he opened up the walls and said, wow, this is going to cost you 30 grand more. Do you trust that contractor anymore? Right? Because next time you
Right.
hire that contractor, what if he gives you a change order and runs up your budget by 30 grand? Now you're stuck, right? You're going
Yeah.
to spend 40 grand on rehab. Now they're going to charge you 30 grand more. What are you going to do then? But if that's your first deal, you might be out of luck. But if that's your first deal as a lender, John might be a little bit out of luck, but he's still obligated to give you back the return that you were promised. So that's how you mitigate your risk. And that's a good way for people to kind of step into it a little bit without fully diving into it and just see if that's something you really like, because there's so
Yeah.
many ways to make money in real estate. This isn't the only way. And John's showing you a way that you can tap into your retirement funds to step into this world, because that retirement fund, you might not touch it for like 20, 30 years, 40 years even, right? Especially just come out of undergrad into a deal. So I love all these options that you have brought up, John. Anything else you would add about self-directed IRA?
Yeah, it's just a really powerful tool. I mean, there are ways to leverage your self-directed, and there are just many different ways to leverage your self-directed account. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I would love to explain them to you.
All right. Well, maybe we're gonna have another full podcast episode on just self-directed IRA, because that could be really valuable for people, right?
Mhm.
Let's maybe have another episode where we just talk about this is the process. This is how you get it transferred over. This is actually how you lend on it tactically, right? This is
Mhm.
the promissory note that you issued. This is how you write it up. This is how you
Yeah.
secure it against a property in the first or second lien position, right? All of these are steps that you have to take in order to invest with yourself directed IRA. Again, not investment advice, but you are now able to pull back the curtains a little bit, John, just with your own example of how you have done it in the past. Because now people they're probably going to feel a little bit less afraid, right? After they just kind of see what you've done, John, and say, oh, that wasn't so bad. Just a couple of PDFs. I can do that.
Yeah, it makes it easier once you've gone through it once.
Well, John could be your guy. Well, John, I want to get back to Section 8 because, man, some of the myths that I'm trying to bust here on this podcast is a lot of people have this association with Section 8 with guns, drugs, drama, but that could be just myths or misinformation on the media because of just what's been covered. So I mean, I just want to hear from you. Like, what has been your experience with Section 8 thus far and your tenants?
So far, my experience with Section 8 has not been the horror stories that I heard when I first got started into real estate. Because Section 8 is something that I had always kind of just been interested in, just due to the fact that my parents, who are immigrants, moved here. They used government subsidies to put food on the table because they had no money. And I see this as a way for people to get into a place to live that's stable and nice, right? So I got scared away, to be honest, in the beginning, just due to all the horror stories saying that they're going to beat up the property, they're just going to destroy everything. It's possible that you can get a Section 8 tenant that will do that, but you can get any kind of tenant that will do that. There are good people who are hardworking and deserve a really good place to live, but might not be able to afford it. So just by shutting that down, it hurts a lot of people in so many different ways.
Man, I'm so glad you're able to share your experience, most importantly, and about your families and how important this means to you. Because I think it shows you the type of person that you are, because you can make money anywhere. But if you can make money and you can help people at the same time, then I think this is what's really beautiful about this affordable housing mission that we're on together. And so just to kind of super clarify, you have not had anybody beat up your house yet,
I
right?
have not. And actually, I have some other long-term rentals that are coming vacant. I'm gonna put more Section 8 tenants in there.
Guys, do you think if Section 8 was all about guns, drugs, and drama, that John would be thinking about switching his market rate tenants to Section 8 tenants? Come on, everybody pay attention. Success leaves clues. Please listen to this guy who has been part of many, many deals, lent to many deals, and a partner in many deals. And he's seeing the benefit of investing in affordable housing, specifically in the Section 8 for some of his properties. Well, John, let's talk about real numbers there, because we've been talking about all these things from theory, right? Like, oh, this is how
Mhm.
you lend on a deal. This is how you protect yourself in a deal. This is how you can use a self-directed. Section 8 tenants are great tenants, but can you tell us like real numbers from a recent deal or maybe a past deal that you did for Section 8? Like, what was the purchase price, rehab, rent, et cetera, et cetera? This way we can make it a little bit more real for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So the one that I like the most is the first one that I got into. And this was in Akron, Ohio. It was listed for upper 60s, I think 68,000. We ended up getting it for 62,500. It was a 2-1. Didn't need any work really, but it was a 2-1. And in Akron, there's a higher demand for 3-1s or 3-bedroom properties. So we converted one of the rooms into a bedroom, and it cost us maybe $4,000 plus to fix everything up. And it rents for $12.97 a month. Yeah.
What? That's
Yeah.
crazy.
It appraised for 88 too. So we got a killer deal on that one.
Amazing. So you got it for
Yeah.
62.5K. You spend another 4 or 5 grand converting into your bedroom, and now you have blown past the 1% rule, right? Because you're
Yeah.
renting it for almost $1,300. Wow,
Yeah.
what a great deal.
Yeah.
And you got to
It's
help out
killer
a
deal.
family at the same time.
Yeah. It was a single mom and 2 kids. It's amazing.
Wow. And maybe for the people that don't understand, right? When you say 12.95 for rent, right? Are you able
Mhm.
to help the audience understand, like, is this single mom with 2 kids paying the 12.95? Like, what's her portion of the rent? Do you know?
No, so she's only paying about 10% of the rent. The government's helping with the rest.
Wow. So I want to point this out to people. She's only paying 10% of the rents of 12.95. The government's paying the rest. So even in a situation where you might come across a tenant that did not pay their portion of the rent, what's your at-risk amount? It's 10% of 12.95 because the government's
Right.
going to pay that 90% on time every single month. And that's another way for you to reduce the risk in real estate where, hey, for a market rate tenant, they might not pay rent that month or they might be late. And now all of a sudden, what are you going to do, right? You still have all your expenses. You still got your mortgage, your insurance, your taxes. You still have all those bills that are due. So this is one way where you can diversify your portfolio with some government-backed rent while you're able to help in this scenario, like what John is doing with his partner, a single mom with 2 kids. We're
I also
comfortable with
think
that.
that the risk is super low because if they come out and first of all, if they destroy the property, they're going to lose their voucher. They don't pay you, they're going to lose their voucher. And the people that we're placing into our homes, they've been waiting for a place, a stable place to live that they can call home for years. So they're really incentivized to make sure that everything goes well.
Dude, thank you. I've been trying to preach this all the time. They're
Yeah.
actually incentivized to be a good tenant. Come on,
Yeah.
they don't want to lose their voucher. All right. So, John, I think we're getting ready to wrap up now. Man, I've just been enjoying this conversation with you. And I got to ask you this question because this is a question I ask every single guest on the podcast. Why do you think affordable housing, particularly the lack of supply of affordable housing, is so hard to solve for?
The biggest reason, in my opinion, is the stigma. I mean, had there not been this whole they're going to destroy your property scare when I first got started, I probably would have dug into Section 8. It probably would have taken me 3.5 years to dig into it. So there's another thing. People are so afraid that the inspectors are going to come in and tell you to fix these properties up. Well, one, you should be fixing these properties anyways. You're a service provider as a landlord. You're providing a clean, safe place to live. And two, you're ensuring the fact that the property does not just completely deteriorate and become worthless. So I think the biggest reason why it's so hard to solve is because of the stigma around Section 8, both the tenants and the inspection process.
Well, I hope that gives people some urgency because with this podcast, we're trying to get rid of that stigma so that more people will enter that space. But hey, right now you are in a what I call blue ocean strategy, right? We've heard of that term. And
Mhm.
there's less competition because of so much of that stigma out there that people might be uneducated about how Section 8 tenants are actually incentivized to be good tenants, right? Now, will you get a bad apple every once in a while? Sure, that might happen. But the fundamentals of real estate still applies. You still have to do a great job screening your tenants. And then after that, you just got to take care of them. Be a good landlord, take care of those problems. And if you can address those issues upfront with an inspection from the housing authority, even better. Because then now you
Right.
can worry a little bit less about those midnight phone calls, about toilets, trash, right? You don't have to worry about that as much. So take advantage of the opportunity that you have right now, getting the knowledge from someone like Jon, and also getting into the head of someone like Jon who has access to capital so that now you can present yourself in a better light, but also just become a better steward of capital because so that you can go out there and actually know what you're doing and asking the right questions and learning how to mitigate the execution risk associated with real estate. This is going to be so important. Jon, you have brought so many gems on this podcast, man. I'm so pumped from this call because I know people are going to get so much value out of this. But for people that want to get more of you and they want to reach out to you, Where can they find out more information about you, man?
Sure. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Jon Chan, JonChanRai. I have a YouTube channel, same thing, JonChanRai. And yeah, those are the 3 areas.
You guys, please make sure you follow him on Instagram at Jon Chan REI. Make sure you subscribe to his YouTube channel because he just started a podcast. It's called The Road to One. And if he can help you remove the fear of figuring out how to get to your first deal, I mean, he has shared tremendous amount of information, right? From someone that has access to capital. So your excuse can no longer be, I have no money. You just learned from Jon about how he has raised money. You just learned from Jon how he thinks as a lender. What's your excuse now? Learn, become a better version of yourself. Follow Jon, and please follow this podcast. Jon, this has been an amazing conversation, man. Thank you so much for coming on, dude. And
Thank you so much for having me.
man, I just want to thank you again, dude, because without people like you, I would never have the home I grew up in. So for that, I truly, truly appreciate you. I appreciate you so much for coming on. I appreciate for your friendship. Thank you so much for coming on. You have provided so much value, and I'm so excited that people are going to get so much value out of this, and they're going to be so inspired to go out there and believe that they can do it. Because I think you have dispelled some of the myths associated with Section 8, and you have also shared some really, really valuable secrets. Thank you for that again, man.
Appreciate you, man. You doing underwriting every single day for 308 days now. That is so cool. And it shows a lot about who you are and how you want to help everyone out there as well. So appreciate you, man.
I appreciate that, man. I can't wait to have you back onto the podcast to talk about self-directed IRA. And until next time, man, it's going to be fun.
All right, take care.
And we are out.